Hey everyone, Papercut here, and it's time for us to hit the 6th part of our beginner's guide. And now we're expanding our strategy. We're going to 2TC and Fast Castle. We want to talk about how and why we do these strategies, as well as give some little peeks into Castle Imperial, because generally both these strategies lead you to playing more in Castle and Imperial. We also want to talk about how to maximize the civs that do well in 2TC and Fast Castle, like what makes those civs good. So we're not going to do a full civ breakdown, but we're going to say, like, for Fast Castle, here's the civs got a good at and why. For 2TC, here are the civs are good at it and why. Let's get into it. So as always, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel my size immensely. If you're interested in coaching, I have my package here. If you look at the box below my video, there is a link to my coaching Discord where you can check out testimonials from people who've gotten coaching, or just have a place where you can talk game and get help from like-minded AOE 4 players trying to get better at the game. So the context of our learning so far, what have we done in our previous AOE 4 beginner's guide videos? Well, first, really focus on the fundamental macro cycle, which is always building villagers, always making units, balancing our resources, and generally being aggressive. Those are the things that when I'm watching Bronze, Silver, and Gold, it's really defined by who can just make units, spend their resources, and attack. So that's why we worked on that first, because it doesn't matter what strategy you pick. If you can't do those things, it's not going to work. And in fact, I'd argue Fast Castle and 2TC require more of a macro and eco focus, which you need to work on for those strategies to be successful. We then refined those skills by committing to a feudal all-in. We made our strategy very simple. We practiced spending our resources. We practiced balancing our eco for the purpose of making units and attacking, and made those skills better by doing that. We then picked a civ to focus on, so that will allow our game skills to grow, and we're not slowing ourselves down by bouncing between civs. And so when you're trying out these other options, it is okay to keep the civ you're currently playing. As I've said, any civ can play any strategy, and in fact, you might be playing a civ that actually benefits more from playing one of the strategies we're talking about today. But still try doing it, even if it's a civ that isn't good at those strategies, because it just helps you understand them. It helps you understand how they work, how they're countered. So when you play against them, you know what to do, and maybe even you'll find you like that strategy better than a feudal all-in. We then learned how to break down a replay and learn from it. And now it's time to add to our strategy diversity and learn these core strategies. Also, at the end, we'll talk about civs of kind of unique strategies. And as we continue to learn more and more, we will then talk about how you kind of blend these strategies together. And so it's not always just a simple, I am all in, I am Castle, I am 2TC. As you get more and more into the game, you realize there's a lot of push and pull between these strategies. So first, we'll start with our 2TC breakdown. What it means. Your goal is you're trying to out-eco your opponent. You're trying to get more villagers, which means your eco will be stronger, which means you can make more units than your opposition who's on 1TC. And even if they're making better units, you might just win because you're just making way more and overwhelming them. So the 2TC overall strategy goes as follows. First, we need to get our resources for our second TC. Scouting is everything here. I'll talk about why. So first, a TC costs 750 resources, 400 wood, 350 stone on average. Some civs have it cheaper. It is very important that you get that second TC as fast as possible. The whole point of the strategy is that you're growing your eco. The longer it takes to get your TC, that means you're slowing down your eco growth, which means you're giving your opponent even more of an advantage who's not doing 2TC. So the key part in almost all of these build orders you see for 2TC is the second, basically as you start aging up to feudal, you're splitting your villas on wood and stone and getting those resources as fast as possible. I highly suggest for whatever civ you are wanting to do 2TC with, you look up a 2TC guide for that civ. Almost every civ probably has some sort of 2TC guide made for them. Even if it's from a really old season, it probably still applies, at least on how to get the TC up efficiently. So make sure you look at one of those guides for that specific move for your civ. Now, once you get the resource for the TC, our first big decision comes, which is, where do I put it? Where do I put this TC? What's my options? And that really comes from scouting. So scouting is very, very important because you want to see what your opponent's doing, because that defines how you place your second TC. If the map is a small map, and your opposition is making units, then you want to do what is called a safe TC. A safe TC focuses on being near your original TC, so you're not running your villagers very far away. So if your opponent attacks, your villas are safe because they're still protected by the main TC. This second TC should still shade or protect a resource, because the second TC is like a big tower. It can put 8 villas in it, it shoots arrows. So you want to still protect something. I suggest in this safe TC scenario, you're putting it on wood or food, because that means they're probably attacking you, so you want to make sure that you can protect resources that allow you to make units. If you really want, you can put the second TC on gold. If your read is that they're making some units, but they're not actually all in you, like they're making a few units to make you have to watch out for your villagers, to put a safe TC, but they're not actually attacking you, you might want to put it on gold, because that in that case you're protecting gold and you can rush a castle H. And so you want to put on gold if you're going castle. You put it on wood or some sort of food resource if you're trying to make sure you continue making units. If the opposition is going 2TC themselves, or they're doing some sort of eco boom, or they're doing fast castle, you want to do what is considered a greedy TC. That means you're putting it on deer or boar, preferably like a deer that's kind of far away from TC. If you have a map where the deer is close, such as Altai, such as Hill and Dale, you can put it just right on that and you're good to go. But on maps that are more wide open, like Dry Arabia, you might have to actually walk your villas a bit to drop it on the deer, which is fine because you're trying to maximize your food gain and you're catching back up by taking the good food. Now, there is a variation of this where you can do 1 or 2 unit harass into a second TC. So, example, French does this a lot. In the French second TC styling, they will still open a knight or two and they will raid with those knights, but the second they make those knights, they'll pull all their villas to go wood and stone and rush their second TC outside of the villas on food to make villagers. And that's because that harassment kind of does 2 things. 1, it forces your opponent to make units when they potentially did not want to. 2, it might make your opponent think you are actually attacking them. If they're not scouting very well, a couple units will make them think you're actually getting ready to push. They'll get very, very defensive, which is actually great for you because then you can just out eco boom them while they're playing way too defensive. Abbasid can also do this with the military wing. Though sometimes Abbasid will use the military wing just to defend their TC and be able to still drop a greedy TC even if they're being pressured. So once you've dropped the second TC, we then have another decision to make. So you've placed either a safe TC or a greedy TC. Now it's time to decide, are you fighting or are you going castle? Generally, your goal is going castle, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you have to decide, can you go to castle on very few units or do you need to fight? Now, if opposition is making units, you just have to defend, which means you need to fight. So your first focus on the second you drop that second TC is getting lots of wood, because you need to drop multiple production. That's key. If you drop 1 production building, you're not going to catch up because your opponent is most likely been making units the whole time, which means you are now behind on unit making. So you have to actually make more production than they have to be able to outproduce them. So you have to get a lot of wood. Once you start dropping production, you want to make your counter. So you want to get on food and start making the counter units. So if they're making horsemen make spears, they're making archers make horsemen, they're making spears make archers, yada, yada, yada. Now, if you're able to hold, the question becomes, do I try to push back and win in feudal or do I win in castle? The key here is, I think you have to ask yourself, what's the units you have and your opponent has. If your opponent has units that are gold units, such as men-at-arms or knights, you generally want to go castle to defend against those things, unless you have your own gold units. So if you're French going 2TC, you can still win the game in feudal because you have knights, you can push back, and you can win with those. But if you're Abbasid, you don't have any gold units. Now you do have a really strong unit in the camel archer, but it's actually better for you just to go castle and get better units in castle. So it's a read on what you have, what your opponent has. It's always kind of safer just to go castle because then you have your full unit roster. Now, if you're not getting pushed, your opponent is doing a very slow push, then maybe going castle is the better option for you. Castle gives you stronger units. You can then grab relics to improve your eco even better, and allows you to be a little more offensive with those stronger units like knights that allow you to kind of take map control and dictate the tempo even more. You can then also take sacred sites and just keep boosting your eco in that way. Once the game goes to castle, it becomes a lot more macro focused game. By macro focus, I mean you and your opponent are both trying to kind of maximize your guys' ecos, whether that's doing what's efficient for your civ, leading to your bonuses, adding more TCs, getting sacred sites, getting relics, things like that. And it becomes who can have the best eco and then manage and use that eco efficiently. If you have the bigger eco, you're dropping lots of production, you're making units, and you're really pushing it to your opponent. And the macro focus is also taking fights that give you something. So not just taking a fight out of nowhere. It's not just taking a fight to win the game, but maybe you take a good fight that pushes your opponent back, and now all the golds in the center are open for you, and you secure a big gold with a keep. That's a macro focus because you're focusing on securing golds and securing long-term resources, which might not win you the game then, but in 15 minutes when the gold's running out, now it really matters because your opponent can't make good units anymore. So it becomes a much more broader macro focus game. Now the second TC has this big window of weakness, I call it. In this graph here, you'll see I played a game against someone I was coaching, and I was having to practice attacking a 2TC. So I went 2TC Japan, he was 1TC HRE, and I didn't outgather him in resources until the 14-minute mark. So that means he has this window as I'm dropping my second TC where even though he's 1TC, he is still gathering more resources. He can make more units. Now, why is that? A TC is actually a very big investment. It's 750 resources plus the build time that the villagers have to take to build it. So it means there's not gathering while they're building the second TC. And then you have to spend extra food to make extra villagers. So it actually takes a long time to pay off. It actually takes a while for that second TC to actually give you better eco. During that time, if a Civ is doing one TC and attacking, they have this huge window where they can just make more units because they're much more focused on dropping production and making units. And so the key to second TC is not dying in that window. Basically, the window for when you drop it, which you can usually drop a second TC anywhere from 4 minutes 30 to 6 minutes, depending on the Civ, and then lasting until that pays off. If you can do that though, and you're defending and you're holding, then all of a sudden you're just making more units than your opponent. So you have to survive until the payoff. That's your window to lose on second TC, generally. So how do other strategies beat a second TC? In general, Fast Castle will beat it because they get relics. So they age up, they get all 5 relics, and each relic is roughly like 2 villagers worth of gathering. Boom, if they get all 5 relics, that's 10 bills. Boom, that's a huge catch up for them. They can also then push you with stronger units. So even if you're second TC and feudal and making units, if these castle units come along and you're not countering them, they can do a lot of damage. And so they often are raiding you while they're getting the relics, and then they do a big castle push. Or they can even add their own second TC, even third TC, and just out macro you. So if you're ahead on vills, but they have relics, eventually you will both hit a vill cap, but then they'll still have more eco because they have the relics. So they can also try to play a longer macro game, trusting that the relics will give them a boost. Feudal aggression, well, that's pretty straightforward. First, they're going to probably try to deny you a good TC placement, force you to drop a very safe second TC. Then they will deny resources and just keep making units and blocking you from getting good food. Maybe you run out of gold, maybe your wood line's not really good. And then they'll eventually destroy your second TC. That's how they win, very straightforward. And honestly, it's often considered, if you say second TC, the best move is just to attack. Fast Castle breakdown. So we talked about 2TC, let's move into Fast Castle. The goal is you go castle and you grab relics to give you an eco boost. You then either go all in with a strong castle units, which is called a timing push, because you have this time when you have better units and those units can destroy a person who's not in castle before they catch back up. Or you can improve your eco with a second TC and play a longer macro game. Overall strategy for Fast Castle. First, in Dark Age, you want to maximize the sheep bound. The biggest danger of a Fast Castle failing is if you run out of food and you're being pressured and you can't make enough castle units to push back a feudal push. So you want to maximize the sheep bound so you can keep their sheep safe under TC. Sometimes people who want to Fast Castle go 2 scouts to try to maximize the sheep, or they just do a scouting pattern where they don't scout the opponent as much, but they just try to maximize, try to get as many sheep as possible. Another thing you can do is you can go out to what is quote unquote dangerous food, so food outside of your TC range. So it's common for civs that want to rush castle to go out onto deer very early in the Dark Age so that they can gather deer and save the sheep for later. This is especially good on things like Hill and Dale, on Altai, when you already have the deer right there, so you can go deer first and then save your sheep. Feudal. Once you get to feudal, you focus on gathering just food and gold. You're trying to get 1200 food, you're trying to get 600 gold at the same time so you can get a really fast castle. Now, you will gather some wood, but the goal is that you're not over gathering wood, because you're trying to hit castle. You're not trying to just have a bunch of wood saved up. So you gather enough wood generally for a tower on the gold, 2 houses, and a production building. The tower on the gold, if you feel like you're going to get attacked, make sure you do 1 gathering of stone with 5 villas. You can get the tower upgrade. Air slits. So that's 100 wood for the tower, 100 wood for 2 houses, and 150 for production building. Once you get all that wood, you can stop being on wood and you can leave. And that production building is going to be the building of the unit you want to make as you enter castle. Now, one thing you can do is delay making that building, because you want to see what your opponent's making. If your opponent's pushing you, you might want to wait on the production building so you can see what you need to make in response to what they're making. If your opponent's not pushing you, you're probably almost always going to go knights. Once you age up, this is where the path diverges. Let's get into that divergence. So you've hit your castle timing. What now? Now what? If you're being attacked as you're going castle, you need to make a castle unit that counters the units being made. So your 2 biggest options is men-at-arms and knights. Now, why make those? Well, you're in castle, you want to make good units. You don't want to make units that your opponent who's in feudal is already making. Another issue is if you want to make a feudal unit in castle, you have to upgrade it to make it worth it. And the feudal upgrades into castle units are fairly gold expensive. And if you're being attacked, you're probably getting pushed off gold, which means you have not enough gold anyway. So you want to make units that are instantly castle units. So men-at-arms, knights. When you make them, if your opponent is doing archer, horseman, you want to make knights. Or they have a lot of archers but very few spears, you want to make knights. They tank very well, they can move, so they can run in, attack, and move back if needed. If your opponent's doing heavy spears and archers, or heavy spears and horsemen, do men at arms. The key is you don't want to push out too soon, but you want to try to make a group and push out. If you're a Civ, when you hit castle that gets any sort of healing from a religious unit, then taking fights, pulling back, and healing your units is very, very important. But you want to make your strong castle unit to push back the opponent and survive. And then you push the enemy back, and then we go into your normal castle play after that occurs. If your opponent is not attacking, you want to make knights. Why is that? Well, I kind of already explained you want to make a castle unit now, but two, a big part of fast castle is map control. You want to keep your opponent feeling like they have to stay on their base. Knights accomplish that because one, they're really fast, two, they're very tanky, and they have charge damage. They can snipe villagers and units that are not in a clump. You also generally will force your opponent to make slow infantry. They're going to want to make a lot of spears. If they get to castle, they want to make crossbows. So that keeps them in their base because they're slow. And while you're harassing and you have this presence of knights being felt, you can grab relics, which is a huge boost to your eco. So you get the relics, and then you put vills on map resources. Once again, you're in this weird space where you're kind of actually still weak in castle, but you want to keep your opponent in their base, and then you catch back up by putting your vills on deer, on boar. If you're a berry civ, on berries. Get on the map resources, get the food coming in, and then leverage that into even more units. Now, once you actually have collected the relics, you're harassing with knights, you now have two choices. First, you can do a castle timing push and try to win the game. Timing being, once again, I've hit castle, I have this moment where I can make good units, you don't have them, I'm going to try to win in that window. Why would you do that? Well, there's a few reasons why. First, you might just play a Civ that has a really strong castle timing attack, and you want to take advantage of that. And we'll get into more of this in a second, but example is Ayubid. Their eco sucks. It's really bad. They have really no eco bonuses outside of like one small one at the beginning of feudal with their golden age. But they don't want to play a long macro game. If the game goes long, their eco is going to be bad compared to almost any of their Civ. But they have a lot of really good advantages to attacking quickly. They have the Camel Lancer. They can make siege in the field, so they can make mangonels or springholds. And so if they really, and they're berry civs, so they can get really good food from berries and deer. So they can try to use the map resources to make a huge army and do one big push and win. It's like their best strategy. And so that makes sense for them to do that. On the other hand, if you're just fast cast with any civ and you get some vill kills, you might be like, well, I've already hurt them. Might as well just push in before they can recover and just try to go in and attack. Especially true if your opponent's playing very greedy. Like your opponent has TCs that are very out on the map, or their villagers are really spread out. You might go, okay, I want to take advantage of this and try to do a lot of eco damage and win. If they're playing very defensive, they got a lot of walls up, their TCs are very tight, they're going farms and things like that, so they're playing super defensive, you might just say, I don't want to push in and lose my units accidentally. I might as well just out eco them because they're playing very passive anyway. So that's kind of the thing you're looking for. And I just talked about how you know you should. And I kind of also explained add a second TC. So in that case, you're playing the macro side. You've gotten the relics, and now you're like, if I can just add a second TC and I can match them on villager count, then my eco will be better. I can win that way. Grabbing sacred sites is also part of this. So you can also grab sacred sites and just win by holding sacred sites. If your opponent's playing super just in their base, scared, grab sacred sites, tower them, put keeps on them, keep making units, and just win by doing sacred site. How do other strategies beat fast castle? Well, in the 2TC, they kind of just survive your castle push. They might also deny you getting relics. They might get a couple relics of their own. They might go even greedier with trade or a third TC. And then their eco is just better than yours. This especially happens if you try to push them and it doesn't work, and they just beat you with a better eco. Feudal aggression, they're trying to deny your gold. If they can't do that, they will deny resources, and their idea is you're going to run out of food. Like, you're going to run out of food, you will be denied gold, and you won't be able to make enough units. So you might make some castle units, but they're going to make so many feudal units, they'll just beat you anyway. So let's go through the civs that are good at 2TC and the civs that are good at castle, and a brief explanation as to why. Order the Dragon, they get a huge eco boost from the deer. Their villagers are already very strong, so you get more of them. That makes their eco very, very good. And they have a very strong castle push timing by going 2TC onto a deer pack, then they go Burgrave, and then they do a mass of men-at-arms with crossbows, and they just push with this very strong group of units, and the Burgrave gives them much cheaper units, so they can afford a lot of frontline, and then the crossbows just kind of kill everything, like literally everything, so it's very good. China, with the Song Dynasty 2TC, they get lots of vills, like lots and lots of vills. Then they can go into a granary transition. Once they get the granaries up, then they have this amazing eco, and that's how they win that. Now, there is a very large window to kill them because the Song Dynasty costs so much food. They have to go 2 feudal landmarks and then a second TC. It's a lot of food, but they do have the Barbican, which gives them a little bit of defensive presence. Zushi Song Dynasty gives them cheaper TCs and cheaper farms. So once again, this idea they can get down a very quick second TC, and then they can go to a cheap granary transition, and they have really good food. Abbasid Eco Wing gives them cheap TCs, cheap farms, and they get cheap vills as a civ bonus if they research it. And so their second TC is a lot cheaper, so it pays off faster, and it's not as eco-intensive because their vills are cheaper. So that's why you see Abbasid almost always go extra TCs. English, they have this synergy with their feudal and castle landmark. Their feudal landmark, the king's... oh god, what's the name of it? I'm sorry. It's the one that gives you the king. That's not the council hall. So they get this free king that can raid, keep their opponent in their base. They can go second TC, and then they can go their cheap boosted farms, so they're ecos, nice and safe, and then they can drop their white tower to stop a push in their tracks. And if their opponent also goes 2 TC, well then they can drop their castle landmark, that's another TC, and boom, now they have 3 TCs. So the English multi-TC strategy is definitely very good. And then of course we have Knights Templar. They have a fast second TC. We don't know if it's good. That's the funny part about it. I think there's still a lot of debate if their fast second TC is good, because to do second TC, you're inherently not doing pilgrims, which is their main eco boost through gold. And if they go second TC, there's a chance they lose map control, which means they can't even do pilgrims after they drop the second TC, and then things can potentially get kind of hard for them. Second TC is definitely good in team games for Knights Templar, but 1v1s, it's still up to debate if that's truly a good strategy for them. Civs Good at Fast Castle. Civs Good at Fast Castle. Ayubid, their age ups are hugely synergetic to a good castle timing. They have multiple age ups that give them a good way to go castle. They can do the growth win, which gives them extra berries and extra villagers. They can go dervish, which gives them healing, so they can defend a lot easier. They can do the military wing, which gives them a free unit to harass with. So as you can see, there's lots of options. They can also get a great castle timing with the boosted berries. They get a lot of food. They go to sheep, and then as they go castle, since they don't need to use villagers to age up, they can still gather resource and have a good resource bank when they enter castle to defend with. Holy Roman Empire, with the Regnitz Cathedral, they can get relics and get a lot of extra gold from relics. They can get a really good castle timing thanks to their prelate that they spawn with. Their relics can then be put in towers for great defense, so they can defend pushes really well with a lot fewer units. And their imp is cheaper, and it produces, with Swabia, they produce villagers very fast, so they can catch up in eco quickly. So it's all very synergetic for a good fast castle. Japan, their castle landmark, their floating gate, gives them ability to put a thing called a Yurishiro into a stable, which then allows them to produce units a lot faster. That they also produces a priest immediately, so they can start gathering relics instantly. So they can start spamming the map with knights, which their knights are very strong. They're called mounted samurai. They're very strong because they can take an extra hit. They have deflective armor. So they're very, very strong. And then they can go into mass Yumi. They're Yumi and they're archers that are cheap and bad solo, but once they get into a mass, they're terrifying, and they can actually get really strong with buffs. And so their knight archer combo is just ridiculous. It's very, very good. Mongols, they're weird. Right now they have this strategy. It's fairly popular. I don't know. I don't think it's that popular at like a gold level, but Diamond on the Mongol fast imp. So they're actually going fast castle to fast imp. They make like 3 or 4 Mangudai to harass. Then they go imp. They go castle with their castle landmark that helps them get a lot of extra gold. So then they go imp, and then they use their imp landmark to get a bunch of free units and win. La-da-dee-la-da-do. It's a fairly difficult, for the average player, it's a very difficult strategy to pull off well. But once you understand its steps, it's really strong. Rus, I'm gonna add Rus, Zushi, and China all do the same thing. It's pro scouts into knights and relics. You might say, I saw Zushi China on the 2TC. Yeah, their 2TC is really good. Their fast castle also is very good. So the pro scouts, you get deer, nice and safe under your TC, or near your TC is for China and Zushi. You then age up with Rus, you go horse archers, which is amazing because Rus gets so much passive gold. They're getting passive gold from gathering deer, they're getting passive gold from their hunting cabins near woods, they're getting then they get relics and they have even more passive gold. They can do this with basically never going to gold. It's wild. Horse archers are foot and wood. They're a fast unit, good damage, so they can just take this map control and just harass with horse archers. Zushi and China, they do knights into relics into either an archer push with their knights, or they do multi-TC and just play a macro game. Ottoman, their castle timing gives them a better military school production speed. It gives them free siege, and they can create their power comp, which is Janissaries, Sipahi, and Siege. Usually Springholds. Now we do have our civs with their unique styles that aren't 2TC, not fast castle, they're not feudal all in. They are an eco boom, but they're unique. So we have the Malian Cow Boom, the House of Lancaster, which actually plays somewhat similar, though into the castle it's a little bit different. So the Malian Cow Boom, the cows produce free food, And if you put them in, they cost gold for the Malians to make, but they put them in these ranches and it provides food. And then their castle landmark doubles the food they produce, something like that. It's crazy. And so they have all of this food when they enter castle. Lancaster, it's manors. Manors provide food and wood passively, and then in Imperial they can also provide gold. And so in both instances they play a very similar style where they're trying to greed as much as they can by moving their booms, but also they have to make units to defend in case they're getting pressured, which they are almost always pressured. You don't want them to get their booms up for free. Once Malian hits castle, they're trying to get relics, but also they have so much food, they just produce units like crazy, like so many units, and their goal is just to mass and harass and harass and harass till the opponent's dead. So far, very, very good at that. While House of Lancaster, you're not really harassing. You can do a knight style where you like fight with knights, but it's often just making a lot of spearmen, yeomen, and men at arms, Earl's Guard, and you just make those and you do a big push with all these units. You just keep making units and you keep pushing. So very similar styles, but not quite 2TC, not quite fast castle. Goals of castle and imperial. So since both these strategies inherently tend to play more castle imperial, let's do some basic breakdown of what you want to do in these ages. I'm going to do videos in the future where we do really like specific breakdowns of these, but I do want to give you a basic, here's what you want to do. Castle's all about securing eco, switching into your power comp and looking for an opening. So securing your eco, you do that with getting relics. Gold, that is on almost every map, located in the center of the map. You want to secure golds with like a keep, or with towers, or with stone walls, so that you have your gold protected and your mid game is secure because you have gold you can use. And then you're generally starting to run out of food on the map, so you're transitioning into farms. You want to do this transition slowly. If you run out of food and then do a mass farm transition, you have this entire period where you have no food, so you could die from a push then. So you're trying to secure safe farms, you're trying to secure gold for the future, and you're trying to secure relics. At that point, I thought I had another bullet. At that point, you're then trying to switch into a power comp of castle-based units. Every civ has their power comp that you're trying to make to them win the game, or you're trying to see what your opponent's making and switch into them. You're not just like not fighting during castle, you're actually constantly trying to fight, you're trying to raid, you're trying to do stuff. But the big thing is you're fighting generally to secure eco, and you're fighting to make sure that you then have a long-term ability to keep fighting. Imperial is about increasing your production, denying gold, raiding, and constant fighting. So at this point, horsemen reach their peak strength because you both should be on farms and you're both trying to get stone and gold in the middle of the map. And so horsemen, if there's fast movement speed, can raid into farms and kill a bunch of vills, raid onto gold and kill a bunch of vills. So horsemen get this like really crazy power spike because one good raid can kill a food eco and then boom, you're dead. Since you're reaching your villager peak, you're maxing out your eco, which generally is like 100 to 120 vills. You want to get lots of production because the way you lose Imperial is by not being able to use your resources. So you want to add lots of production, continuously make units, and kind of keep pushing because you might lose a fight, but if you're producing faster than your opponent, then you'll just overwhelm them eventually. And you're doing these fights to deny resources. You're trying to make sure that your opponent, biggest thing is can't get gold. And then if it hits this slog, you kind of hit this Imperial fight cycle. A big thing is when to get stone walls. Stone walls prevent the horseman raid, which is really, really important. You want to put keeps on gold and maybe a keep on your main farming area. And then you hit this Imperial fight cycle where you take a fight, you push your opponent back, you then tower or wall or keep, you build more production, and you push again. And you like do this very slow push of just keep pushing your opponent back, but not overdoing it because you might walk into the opponent's reinforcements, but you're just doing this cycle of I fight, I take space, I build production, I fight again, boom, boom, boom. And try to raid. So overall, I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you have, oh wait, right, our goals, my bad. Try these strategies, say you like them. You will do worse at first because they're new. You're gonna struggle with them. Please look up guides to how to enact these strategies for your civ, so you can do it efficiently, and then just try it. Just try it, see how it goes. And see if you actually vibe with those strategies more than feud all in. With that, hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Please check out my other content. Please check out my coaching Discord. Follow me on Twitch, all that good stuff, or on YouTube Live now. And good luck in your games.